Guys, this game is so good, guys. But it's so scary also. There's your intro. That's all I could come up with. Welcome back, everyone, to UHYEAH Season OG, FNAF Month 2. By the time this video is out, Secret of the Mimic should be released. But we're not talking about that today. Maybe next time. Maybe. No. Today, we're actually going to be taking a look back at a FNAF fan game I've already talked about previously. Well, kinda. About 2 years ago at this point, I made a video on the amazing FNAF fan game, Phobia: The Awakening. But if you haven't seen that video, allow me to catch you up to speed. So first we have to talk about the children's entertainment group known as The Wiggles. Just stick with me here, okay? So The Wiggles are a group of Australian musicians and entertainers that got really popular in the 90s and early 2000s. If you were born at the right time, or had younger siblings who were, you're probably fairly familiar with The Wiggles. Even if you don't fall into that category, you may still be aware of a version of The Wiggles, since members of the group often leave or retire as new replacements are brought in for a whole new generation. But we're not talking about that today. We're strictly talking about the OG Wiggles: Greg, Anthony, Murray, and Jeff. Now, the Wiggles have released a ton of VHS and DVD specials over the years, often filled with a bunch of different segments strung together. What I want to focus on here is a type of segment the Wiggles did for their home video releases in the early days of their existence, that being the Wiggles puppets. These were simply just rehashes of older songs they had performed in previous videos, but with a very unsettling twist. Not only was the music in these segments pitched up like Alvin and the Chipmunks, which made the songs undeniably worse, they were also accompanied by brand new music videos featuring the Wiggles puppets. These things are genuinely terrifying. I hate to use the word uncanny, but I mean, that word pretty effectively describes what we're looking at here. The altered songs mixed with the scary-ass puppets was truly a recipe for disaster, and it's no wonder they eventually phased out this segment over the years. Now, when I was a kid, I don't remember getting scared by that much stuff. However, the things I did get scared by have stuck around in my brain for life. In the previous video on this game, I talked about how the trailer for the movie Aliens in the Attic scared me so bad, I refused to even walk into movie theaters or video rental stores in fear I would simply see the cover of the movie on the shelf. Yeah, it was pretty bad. Other random childhood trauma I can think of off the top of my head is a nightmare I had where Barney the dinosaur was in a black void and he dropped a brick on his toe and said the F word. And these evil ass screamer videos people used to make, where it'd be like a normal upload of a song from Sesame Street or something, only for the song to end with a loud screamer clip. Seriously, fuck anyone who made those. I will never forgive you. Anyway, as you may have been able to pick up on, the Wiggles puppet segments do indeed fall into my childhood trauma repertoire. So learning that there was an entire FNAF fan game based around them was very intriguing to me. That game was Phobia: The Awakening, and not only did I really enjoy it, but it also scared the shit out of me. Not even just because of the Wiggles puppets, but because the way the game was structured made almost every night feel like the most stressful shit on planet Earth by the end of it. I don't think I've played a FNAF fan game that captured that same feeling since. It was truly something else. Anyway, the game was great, I made a video on it, and that was that. When I made said video on the original game, I was well aware that a sequel known as Phobia: Long Hours was in active development, and it looked genuinely incredible. Definitely one of my most anticipated fan projects for sure. My plan was to make a video on the sequel when it came out as a follow-up to my original video. However, days turned into months and months turned into years. Yet still, the sequel never came out. So, what the hell happened? Well, not only was Long Hours going through a bit of a development slump, but the creator of the Phobia series actually wanted to take both the sequel and the original game in a new direction, completely stripping it of the Wiggles branding while keeping the creepiness of the designs completely intact. Not only would this potentially help make the game more appealing to those with no knowledge of the Wiggles, but it also gave Iz the opportunity to completely revamp Phobia: The Awakening with an updated story, updated visuals, improved gameplay, and more. So, forget everything I told you about the Wiggles, maybe besides what the puppets look like, because today, we're taking a look at the recently released overhaul of Phobia the Awakening, known simply as SHOWMAN'S The Awakening. I wasn't really sure what to think of all this at first, but after playing the revamp myself, I can tell you all not only is this game better than it was before, but it's also even scarier than it was before. I don't know how IS managed to do it, but they absolutely did. While I will be covering a lot of the same stuff I did in the original video, there's also a ton new here to talk about, including a completely reworked boss fight that was easily the scariest thing in the entire game. Strap in, folks, because this is SHOWMAN'S The Awakening. But first, this video is brought to you by Raycon. Well, the summer months are quickly approaching, and that means a whole lot more time being spent outside. I mean, you gotta take advantage of the nice weather, right? Come on. What's better than a nice walk on a crisp summer evening, am I right? Well, you know what's even better than that? Listening to some banger tunes while you do it. This is where I'd put a quirky segue if I could think of one. We're talking about the everyday headphones by Raycon. That's right, not the earbuds this time. I'm like 90% sure I mentioned I was more of an earbuds guy in a previous Raycon segment, but I gotta say, maybe I just hadn't used any banger headphones yet, because these are pretty awesome, I can't lie. They are just so comfortable. Just like the earbuds you're likely familiar with already, these headphones boast a great battery life. 40 hours on a full charge, and you can quick charge for 15 minutes and get 2 hours of battery life. They also start at just half the price of other leading audio brands. So just like the earbuds, these are genuinely a great deal. The real star of the show here, however, has to be Raycon's hybrid active noise cancellation. When I first got these things, testing out this feature was the first thing I did. And it was even better than I thought it'd be. If you just want to drown out other people in a busy environment, or truly immerse yourself in whatever you're listening to, the everyday headphones by Raycon truly have you covered. I even went on a brisk evening walk with them, and they worked perfectly. Highly recommend. Go to buyraycon.com/UHYEAH15 to get 15% off Raycon's best-selling headphones. Thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Jumping into the game for the first time, we get to see the brand new main menu, which has these great short animations for a few of the animatronics featured in the game. If you remember anything from when I previously talked about this game, you probably remembered the fact that, unlike most FNAF fan games, SHOWMAN'S The Awakening is actually a real-time 3D game, which isn't super common for this style of fan game, and it's always cool to see it pulled off correctly. This means that these menu animations, and of course the rest of the game, are all being rendered in real time, which lets SHOWMAN'S do a lot of cool stuff you don't normally see in FNAF fan games, which we'll touch on a bit more later. Another thing you might remember me saying from the other video is that the original game was actually made in Blender of all things. That's right, the 3D modeling software. Older versions of Blender actually had full support for creating video games, which is not super well known, especially these days. I mean, it's genuinely fairly rare to come across a game made in the old Blender engine. From what I can tell, this engine is pretty bad all things considered, and there are a lot of restrictions put in place when using it, such as every model being limited to a certain number of faces. Not saying you can't make good things in this engine, I mean, this game is literally proof you can, but it just seems very limiting, especially compared to most modern game engines like Unreal, for example. Anyway, yes, just like the original game, SHOWMAN'S The Awakening is also made in Blender, meaning it has the exact same restrictions as the original game. This also means there really isn't that much of a leap in graphical quality compared to Phobia, at least in like the resolution department. The visual changes here come in the form of significantly improved animations and models that are made with more knowledge of the engine's restrictions, thus making them look a lot better. The improvements are actually quite substantial, but I didn't even notice them at first because I had actually forgotten how rough the original release looked in some areas. We'll go over some of the differences in a bit, but how about we actually jump into night 1 here. Upon starting night 1, we're greeted by a short text cutscene, a loading screen with some quick story setup, and then we're thrown right into the office. Obviously, most of this is the same as before, so we'll quickly go over everything. Since this game is actually 3D, you can look all around the office, not just in predetermined locations. You could look at the damn ceiling if you wanted to. It'd be a waste of time, but I mean, you could do that. Even though this game lets you look all around you, there aren't actually any animatronic mechanics that require you to look directly behind you. Instead, what is located behind you is the only clock in the entire room, meaning you have to waste time checking the clock if you want to know how close you are to the end of the night. This is genuinely a really clever way to utilize the space in the office, and presents a decent little risk-reward thing you can do at any time of the night. It being an analog clock rather than a digital clock also means you're likely going to need to look at it for at least a second or two longer than the typical FNAF clock. Turning around now, the desk in front of you features two different light buttons you can use to brighten the two giant hallways to your sides. It also holds a mask underneath it, which can be used for a set of specific characters we'll talk about in a second. Finally, there's this white woman in front of you. They aren't relevant yet, so just try your best to ignore the giant, terrifying white woman station directly in front of you, okay? Okay. Let's talk about the visuals. When I first jumped into this game, I purposefully didn't look at any footage of Phobia the Awakening beforehand to make sure my mind was as fresh as it possibly could be. Like I mentioned before, this made me think the office looked pretty much the exact same. But that could not be further from the truth. Not only is the lighting way better here, but pretty much every single model is completely redone. The best example of this is the high voltage shock machine on the right side of the desk. In the original game, this model lacked a lot of detail and was really just a rectangle with a lever and some 2D textures on it. Now, it actually has a really cool design with a dial, a better looking lever that's way more stylized, and a light on top of the machine that I think has way more character than the smaller lights on the original model. Speaking of lights, the buttons used to control the hallway lights look a lot better here as well, with the actual light text in particular feeling a lot more realistic compared to the font just being plastered across the bottom of the original button. These small little improvements are everywhere in this game, and it looks a whole lot better now because of it. And reminder, this is the same engine as before. Everything still has the exact same restrictions here. Really impressive stuff. Pressing the spacebar brings up the camera system, which shouldn't be much of a shock if you've played any FNAF game ever, except for FNAF 4 and FNAF 6, and Tyke & Sons Lumber. The same visual improvements seen in The Office have also been given to the camera environments. I don't think I need to yap about that anymore, but yeah, it looks a lot better. Better lighting, a lot of the cameras have better framing, the whole shebang. In terms of gameplay, the cameras really aren't that useful on night one. However, they will become useful very soon. So don't think we're going to be waiting until like night 4 for the cameras to do something. Besides, since the cameras aren't really useful in any super specific way right now, the first night is the perfect time to get a good look at all the rooms and watch the animatronics that are active walk around the building. Something you likely won't be doing very much of in just a few nights. Speaking of the animatronics that are active, how about we talk about them? Night 1 introduces the player to what are essentially the Bonnie and Chica equivalents in this game. AKA, they work the exact same way, except one of them uses the right hallway, and the other one uses the opposite. With that said, these two animatronics are probably my least favorite designs in the whole game. Whoops. Not to say the Wiggles were the peak of character design or anything, they're just guys in colored shirts, but these two replacements are on the more boring side of things, especially compared to some of the other animatronics later in the game. Johnny is the first of these two starter animatronics, and he's the son of the main animatronic, Showman. He's pretty much just a blonde guy with a red fiery jacket and blue jeans. Fairly simple. Don't love him, but I also don't hate him. The one thing I will say here, and this actually applies to all the designs in this game, is that the design does a really good job of incorporating the style of the Wiggles puppets onto original designs. As boring as I think Johnny is, he's still creepy as shit under certain circumstances. And it really all comes down to that damn face. The other animatronic character introduced on this night is Harry, and I'd say he's definitely a step up in terms of character design. He has the creepy ass face, of course, but he's also rocking a green dress shirt, black pants, and a bow tie. I think he fits into the cast a lot better than Johnny does, even if this design is also fairly simple. Just like Johnny though, this guy can and does look really creepy in the context of the game. So in that regard, Both of these designs work for their intended purposes. Okay, but what about the gameplay? One of the biggest advantages of having a FNAF style game in a full 3D environment like this is that you can have the animatronics move in real time without much issue. This is fully utilized here, as both Johnny and Harry actually spend way more time in your hallways than the cameras, especially on later nights. But we're on night 1, so how about we set the scene? Let's say you're hopping into this game blind for the very first time, with all of your knowledge coming from playing other FNAF games in the past. You're aware of the mask and how it works, and you're aware that both of these starter animatronics are going to try to make their way to the hallway and into your office. Eventually, one of them does make it to a hallway, and from there, you keep an eye on them, trying to see when the game expects you to put the mask on to make them go away. But as you keep an eye on them, they slowly get closer and closer and closer until you're paranoid as hell because you have no idea why the mask isn't working and why they have so many damn phases in the hallway. Then, just as they're pressed up right against the entrance to the office from the hallway, they straight up walk into the office and look you dead on. That's when you put the mask on and scare them away. So for the entire game, you have these two animatronics that constantly hang out in both hallways and demand almost constant attention, making sure to see what phase they're on, and how close they are to entering the office. With that said, there is a fairly obvious tell when they're about to enter the office, but it is way more beneficial to know how close each of them are to entering, especially on later nights, when you have to use the cameras a lot more. And that's pretty much the entire mechanic. Fail to put on the mask fast enough when either of them enter the office, and you get jump scared. Every character in this game has a unique game over screen, which is one of my favorite little details that a fan game dev can put into their game. It's always cool. The voice acting is also pretty good for these. No complaints from me.
Game over, dear friend.
Back to night 1 though. There's actually one more part of this mechanic I haven't mentioned. Using the lights on your desk that are connected to each of the hallways, you can actually stall both of the animatronics in their current phase. This is definitely something a little more useful in the later nights, but if you need a tiny bit more time before either of these guys enter the office, there's an option for you. And with that, Night 1 comes to an end. Setting up the basic gameplay mechanics, we'll be balancing everything around for the rest of the game. Overall, this is a pretty great first night, and teaches the player some of the most essential skills for survival pretty effortlessly. Following this night is actually a whole ass cutscene. Not a pre-rendered one as far as I can tell either. These are just straight up in-engine cutscenes in a FNAF fan game, which is so cool to see. I really love the cartoony art style of the humans in this game. I think it really fits the overall vibe, and definitely feels a bit Scott Cawthon-y in the best way possible. Really good shit. I'm not gonna go over most of the cutscenes in this video, because I think they're actually best experienced when playing the game for yourself. And the same goes for the various tapes you can find scattered around the nights. Do yourself a favor and play this game at some point. I wouldn't want to ruin all the cutscenes for you. I'll be talking about a few of them near the end of the video, closer to the boss fight stuff, but other than that, I'll leave it up to you. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get straight into Night 2. Now that we've pretty much set everything up, the rest of this should go by a lot faster. So let's do it. Night 2 raises the stakes quite a bit, not only making the previous animatronics harder to deal with, but also introducing 2 new animatronics to the gameplay loop. Hey, so remember the white woman on the other side of the desk? I'm sure you probably do. Well, she's finally relevant now, so let's talk about her. This is Peggy, an animatronic that was never actually finished in the lore of the game. I guess I haven't really touched on where this game even takes place, but if you couldn't tell from the mostly gray environments, we play as a security guard in an animatronic warehouse. This means there's unfinished bits and pieces of other animatronics scattered all around the location, including Peggy here, although she's definitely way more finished than most of these other rejects. Peggy is like proper creepy, and that's not just because she's staring us down for the entire game. Her design definitely has one of the most unsettling face molds, and the lipstick does not help either. In the original game, this character was like an elf or something, which I actually have no idea if this was based on an actual Wiggles character or if they were like an OC or something. I refuse to look this up because I like the idea of this random elf just being in the game for no reason way more. Anyway, they were also pretty creepy, but they were also like an elf clown thing. That's borderline cheating when it comes to being scary, right? Even with that said though, I still think Peggy is scarier looking. That face mold is genuinely doing a lot of heavy lifting here, but man, it is good. When it comes to her actual gameplay mechanic, Peggy will slowly activate over the course of the night. She has a few different phases where she slowly opens her eyes, but eventually she will fully activate and prepare to leap out at you. When this happens, you have to pull the lever to shock her and revert her back to the first phase. So it's pretty much the Scrap Baby UCN mechanic, but way more involved. If you shock Peggy when she's in her first phase, she'll jump scare you for doing it too early. If you shock her too many times in a night, she will also jump scare you. Pretty much just don't touch that lever until she starts going crazy. I love this mechanic, as not only is it super creepy having an animatronic in front of you for the entire game, but some of the changes in the phases leading up to the final phase are genuinely quite subtle and hard to tell apart, making it somewhat of a struggle at times to predict when she might strike. So yeah, overall, this is one clean-ass mechanic, and it actually got me killed quite a few times in some more stressful situations. Like, if you have to deal with multiple animatronics in the hallways at once, on top of Peggy being close to striking, then everything becomes like 20 times more stressful. It's great. The other animatronic added on this night is Cap'n Cackle, which is by far the redesign that is closest to the original Wiggles puppet that it replaces. The original game had the iconic Wiggles character, Captain Feathersword, in this role, so Cackle still being a pirate makes them the closest by default. In terms of design, I mean, they're a fairly generic looking pirate, but I think it works well enough. They get some pretty cool frames on the cameras, so I'm fine with them for the most part. Also, similar to Peggy, Cackle has one of the most terrifying face molds, so that definitely adds a lot of points to his design. But to be honest, Cap'n Cackle's design isn't really that important to me. What is important to me is their role in the gameplay. Cackle is pretty much Foxy, the puppet, and that one camera-hopping playful poodle in Playtime with Percy, all combined into one gameplay mechanic. And they are really good. He always starts the night hanging out in his room near the top of the map next to the show stage. Your goal is to keep an eye on him as much as you can in order to stop him from leaving his room. He has a couple different phases in the room showing you how close he is to potentially moving, but as long as you are religiously looking at that room, he will likely never move from it. This might just sound like the FNAF 2 music box at first, which would be pretty shitty, but it's both what happens when he leaves the room and the gameplay mechanics surrounding it that make this work as well as it does. Let's say you find yourself in a particularly tense situation that forces you to look away from Cap'n's room for an extended period of time. This will likely give him enough movement opportunities to leave the room. When this happens, you have to quickly check every camera in the building to try and find him. He actually blends into the darkness fairly well in a few cams, so this can actually be quite the challenge. Fail to find him fast enough, and he'll jump scare you. Find him before the time runs out, and he'll return to his camera once again. So, not only does this mechanic force you to use every camera in the building, but it also isn't the sole camera mechanic taking up all the time on the cameras, like the music box in FNAF 2. You'll see what I'm talking about on night 3. I think this creates a really good balance that, unlike the music box from FNAF 2, doesn't make the entire game feel like it revolves around one single camera. There's also so much happening in the office in this game with both hallways and Peggy that you really have to balance everything perfectly. Everything demands a pretty equal amount of attention, and overall, I think it's great. With that, night 2 is officially in the books. Time to dive in to night 3. While Night 3 also introduces 2 more animatronics to the gameplay loop, they definitely aren't as interesting as the previous set. Not to say they're bad, not at all actually. I think this pair does a wonderful job rounding out the gameplay loop for the rest of the game. But similar to our first 2 animatronics, these guys are essentially the same mechanic, copy-pasted. I think this actually works really well in terms of gameplay, but it's definitely less interesting to talk about, you know? Regardless, let's get into it. The animatronics introduced on this night are Tony and the main man himself, Showman. I think from a character design perspective, both of these guys are some of the strongest in the game, mainly just because they have some very distinct, memorable outfits. Showman's tall and lanky appearance, mixed with the easily recognizable hat and suit, make him a really strong main character for this game, even if his actual gameplay mechanic doesn't really make him feel like he's in that role. Regardless, I think his design works really well. Tony stands out a lot compared to the other members of the main band, thanks to his very unique chef outfit. outfit. The checkered pattern reminiscent of a pizzeria floor tile pattern located on multiple parts of his outfit look really cool. All that mixed together with the yellow scarf around his neck tying the whole design together makes Tony my favorite member of the main four from a character design perspective. So yeah, both of these guys are pretty freaking good. But what do they add to the gameplay loop? I mentioned before that looking at Captain Cackle wasn't the only mandatory camera use in SHOWMAN'S, and both of these new animatronics are what I was talking about. Just like Johnny and Harry, they both wander around the warehouse trying to get into your office, except instead of trying to enter through the hallways, they try and enter through the vents. That's right. Located near the bottom of the map by your office are 3 different vents that you have to keep track of constantly now that there's actual threats in play that use them. In theory, this mechanic should be pretty simple to handle. One of the 2 new animatronics will enter a vent camera, then slowly make their way up to your office through multiple camera phases. To stop them from entering the office, all you have to do is block the vent, sending the animatronic inside back to the other rooms once they hit the block. Here's the thing though, this mechanic gets a whole lot more tricky when you have both animatronics in vents at the same time. This forces you to constantly check both vents to see which animatronic is closer to the office than the other. You can only block one vent at a time, so you have to make sure that the block is on the animatronic that is closest to the office while also making sure to move the block to the other vent once the closer animatronic is successfully blocked. This mixed with, well, everything leads to a super involved, stressful, and fun gameplay loop where you have to carefully balance all these mechanics at once while making sure not to give too much attention to just one of them. Maybe this mechanic is actually more interesting to talk about than I gave it credit for. It's so easy to get overwhelmed with all the stuff happening at once, especially on later nights. So you really have to lock in, learn the game, and try your best to remain collected. With that said, we're done with night 3, and the base gameplay loop as a whole. Yeah, as you may have picked up on, night 3 is the final night that adds new gameplay mechanics to the gameplay loop. Night 4 and 5 are just the same thing, but everything is faster, which actually does work pretty well and serves as a fun challenge to test your mastery of the gameplay presented in the first 3 nights. Well, okay, I guess there is one change. Captain Cackle now has a bunch of bloodstains all over him. A pirate animatronic with an actual hook for a hand has a bunch of bloodstains all over them all of a sudden. I wonder what happened. However, we aren't done just yet. Night 6 is a boss fight after all, meaning there are a few more mechanics to talk about. But before we get into that, I want to take this opportunity to talk about SHOWMAN'S sound design. One of my biggest issues with my original video on this game is that I spent a lot of time talking about how good the sound design was without actually showing you how good it was. It's something that has always bothered me. But it was the very early days of me not editing my videos. Mistakes happen, and I was low-key dying during all of its production. AKA my neck was really sore and I was essentially bedridden while making it. But none of that matters, because now I have the opportunity to fix this crucial mistake and show you just how good the sound design in this game really is. Let's take a look at my successful Night 5 attempt. For starters, there are tons of little noises scattered throughout the night that are mostly red herrings. A lot of FNAF games do this, so this isn't exclusive to this game or anything, but they're still here and they're very effective nonetheless. Here you'll see a clip of a very obvious banging noise that sounds like it's coming from a vent. But when I check the vents, nobody's there. It's the little sounds like that that really keep you on your toes. So it's great to see that SHOWMAN'S absolutely nails them. Something that is a little more unique to this game is the sound design for the animatronics in the hallways connected to your office. Since they move closer towards you in real time, you can actually hear them move towards you every time they progress in phases. Not only can you hear their loud footsteps, but you can also occasionally hear them say random voice lines, which stacked with all the other noises makes things feel a whole lot more stressful. And when they finally decide to actually enter your office and attack you, the fast, loud clanking of them walking right up to your face is literally perfect, and immediately makes you react regardless of whatever else you may be doing. The real star of the show here, however, has to be the background music that plays during each night. Since it's kind of inconvenient to look at the clock to check the time in this game, another option is given to you in the form of the background music. The further the night progresses, the louder and more in your face the music becomes. It's pretty normal for most of the night, but once you get near the end, things really ramp up and the music becomes purposefully overwhelming when mixed with all the other noises playing at once. The ending music really puts the pressure on, since at that point, you know you're close to the end of the night, but you don't know how close you are exactly. So, you just have to keep going while trying to maintain composure, waiting for the music to finally end as the screen slowly fades away. The amount of tension that immediately gets released when the night ends in this game is unlike any other game. It is genuinely perfect. To quickly wrap this up, all the other bits of sound design here, like the camera clicks, jump scare sounds, and everything else I can't think of, are also all pretty good. But I don't have much to say about any of them. Regardless, the sound design in this game is genuinely amazing, and it's absolutely one of the best parts about it. Okay. We are almost ready for the boss fight, but first, let's quickly go over some story stuff so this boss fight makes a little bit more sense. So, in this game, you play as a guy named Mark. Obviously, he's a security guard at the warehouse, but throughout the story, it's slowly revealed and hinted at that Mark is connected to the establishment way more than even he remembers. This results in him remembering some traumatic experience with Showman, but it's never fully explained what actually happened during the main story. During the course of the game, the phone guy you talk to is fully aware that the animatronics at the warehouse are very dangerous. And by the end of night 4, he straight up tells Mark not to go back for the 5th night, because it's straight up just that unsafe. However, because of his unresolved trauma with the location, Mark goes back to the building for night 5 against the phone guy's wishes. Mark does the night like normal, but once it's completed, a cutscene plays that shows him suddenly strapped to a chair, unable to move, as Showman slowly walks towards him and forces a mask onto his face. Presumably, this is the same mask you use during gameplay to scare away the animatronics, since it's completely missing during night 6. Upon starting night 6, it's revealed a nasty fire started in the building in between the last cutscene and now, leaving pretty much everything left inside completely ruined. Since our main man Mark is now, well, not really in the running to be a playable character, Night 6 has you playing as the phone guy going back to the building in order to find out what happened to Mark after the events of Night 5. The night starts with a cutscene of phone guy exploring the building, which quickly leads to him finding Mark. The mask that was forced onto him by Showman is now stuck to his face, and he's clearly no longer the same Mark we were playing as for the first 5 nights. He launches towards phone guy, trying to kill him, but he quickly escapes and runs to the office, where Night 6 truly begins. The first thing you'll probably notice about this night is just how dark it is. The other nights all have this almost warm lighting coming from the ceiling, but because of the fire, all the lights in your office have been completely destroyed. This is where the new office mechanic comes into play, the flashlight. By holding down right click on the mouse, you'll pull out a flashlight that you can use to get a better look all around the office. Using this flashlight for the first time will also probably make you notice that the clock behind you is now gone, meaning you have no real way to tell how far you are into the night other than the music. I think the game has done a pretty decent job preparing you for this, so I think removing the clock is actually a pretty decent difficulty spike for this part. When using the flashlight, a new piece of the UI will appear that shows how much battery it has remaining. It actually depletes fairly quickly, all things considered, so it's definitely better to only use it when you have to. This means you're likely going to be playing the office sections of this boss fight in complete darkness, which I think is a really fun challenge that tests your awareness of the office you've built up over the course of the game. It's also just another good difficulty spike to include alongside the removal of the clock. The actual format of this night has specific threats being added in a specific order each attempt, so you slowly but surely learn to prepare for when certain characters are added to the gameplay. When you first start the night, all of the animatronics from the first 5 nights are gone, except for Peggy and Cap and Cackle. While both of them are still here and function the same way, they've received some serious damage from the fire. Peggy looks especially scary in her burnt form, considering you're looking at her in complete shadow for most of the night. Cap'n's burnt form kinda just looks like he has a toilet for a face. I'm not gonna lie, I'm sorry, but he definitely loses a lot of aura here, like... What are we doing? Besides that though, yes, they function the exact same way, but just a little bit faster. You do this for a little bit until the first new threat is introduced. Mark. That's right. The person you played as for pretty much the entire game is now one of the main antagonists on the final night. This has always been one of the coolest concepts to me, and I think it's executed very well here. Mark essentially replaces the hallway animatronics that are not present during this night. He's just ever so slightly different. While the regular hallway animatronics linger in there for a long ass time over multiple phases before eventually entering the office, Mark instead shows up at the end of either of the halls for only a little bit before rushing towards you. Once he makes it up there, you have to flash him with the flashlight directly in the eyes in order to scare him off and send him back to the cameras. The speed of this mechanic, mixed with everything else, can really trip you up here, especially with how fast Peggy can activate now. I think it works quite well, but it definitely took me a few tries to really lock down how to work the mechanic into the flow of everything else. The final animatronic added to this boss fight, the figure, is a simple endoskeleton with a blank animatronic mask. They take the place of both of the vent animatronics and are essentially the same thing, but way more aggressive. The figure will enter one of 3 vents at random and linger there for a little bit. It's your job to constantly check the 3 vents to find them and seal the vent they're in before they can enter the office. Unlike the other vent characters, the figure has no phases, just the one appearance in each vent. This means you have way less time to find them and make sure that vent is sealed, which I think is a really good way to increase the difficulty of that mechanic. By the time night 5 rolls around, you're already going to be constantly checking those 3 vent cameras anyway, so might as well build the entire mechanic around it for the big finale. If they manage to sneak into the office, they'll actually crawl out of the hole in the vent exit, which is a really cool animation that totally caught me off guard. They'll then linger in the office for a little bit, giving you some hypothetical time to survive if you're at the very end of a night, before quickly jump scaring you. And that's pretty much it. You have to deal with all those fast mechanics coming at you constantly until the end of the night. I definitely died here the most, but the challenge felt very fair, and none of the deaths felt cheap. It was always me messing something up. Overall, this is a really scary, really fun, really challenging end to this game. The game ends with the phone guy running out of the office and towards the exit of the warehouse. Just before he can leave, however, Mark appears from the shadows and the screen cuts to black with a scream. Rest in peace, phone guy, probably. And with that, the credits roll, ending this chapter of the Showman's story. I really hope that sequel eventually comes out because, wow, this was truly amazing. An experience I already held in high regard, made even better. You love to see it. Upon beating the game, you gain access to the gallery, where you can see all the 3D models of the characters in the game, which is pretty cool. I do wish there was more here, like being able to play the jump scares, for example, but it's not a big deal. One thing I really wish this game had is a custom night. Having extra challenges and some bonus animatronics would have really gone a long way to give Showman some extra replayability. Regardless, this game is still very good, and I had a blast taking a look at it again. With all of that out of the way, I think it's time we wrap up here. Showman's The Awakening is a perfect example of a few relatively small changes stacking up and coming together to improve an already great experience that much more. If you've never played this game before, now is the perfect time to do so. It's really in the best state it's ever been in. I'm excited to see what's next for this series, and I wish Is the best of luck on whatever they do next. Well, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say here. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been UHYEAH, and I'll see you all next time on FNAF Month 2. Bye, everybody.
And finally, there appears to be a mysterious purple smudge on the right of Springtrap. Now, it is unclear whether this was intentionally left there by Scott or if it's some kind of a accidental purple smudge. I don't know, what do you guys think?